In my teenage years, those dramatic years when we first struggle with defining our identities, I spent a lot of time being rather judgmental and reactive. Instead of trying on a particular identity by affiliating with a certain friend group, I was more cautious about who I should let into my social circle. Now, I often chose to go it alone, or hide out at church, or spend time with my family. Truthfully, I was uncertain of who I was or even who I wanted to be. And as I left for college, things didn't change much. I do remember calling home shortly after classes started to tell my mom about this exciting new friend I'd made during orientation. I remember excitedly telling my mom, "Yeah, Mom, this person is wonderful. Yeah, her name is Willow. Yeah, like the tree. She's very interesting. She grew up in Washington State, totally off the grid. Mom, she's really one of us." I remember saying that specifically. She's one of us. When I think back on it, I'm not exactly sure what I meant by that, or even who this us was. And actually, she most certainly wasn't one of us at all. She was definitely her own person, and she showed me that I wasn't even one of us, and helped me not to fear the world, but to embrace it in all of its diversity. That's kind of how I think the disciples are in today's gospel, as young and reactive teenagers searching for who they're called to be, but afraid of becoming it. Instead, they're more interested in playing judgmental games about who's acceptable and who's not. And the disciples come back to Jesus with a self-congratulating sound in their voices, rejoicing in their victory. Jesus, Jesus, hey Jesus, you're not going to believe it. We saw this guy casting out demons in your name. He wasn't one of us, and so we tried to stop him. We told him he couldn't do that. We told him that was against the rules. We told him to stop it because he was not following us. He was not one of us. And they act out that drama that's as old as time, the never-ending conflict of rivalry against brother or sister, neighbor or friend. It's probably one of the most unifying elements of humanity, sadly. And we even use it to create our own identities and to dwell in our own tribes. And I can just imagine Jesus, exasperated, shaking his head in disbelief, saying to himself, "Is this what we've devolved to? Us against them? Seriously, guys? Have you not been watching? Have you not been listening? What it is you think that we're doing here?" Of course, these are rhetorical questions, and Jesus is expressing his frustration. You see, Jesus has been struggling to shift the disciples' understanding from a limited human occupation to God's more generous and gracious purview. The disciples are having a great difficulty following where Jesus is leading them. They're more comfortable living in a world fueled by judgment, moralism, and tribalism. Perhaps just like we often are. 2 weeks ago, Peter tried to protect his friend from the danger ahead, and Jesus called him Satan. And then just last Sunday, the disciples were arguing amongst themselves about who was the greatest. And Jesus called them to welcome children instead. Do you remember just last week when he held up that toddler in his arms as a model of what we're called to? Our story this Sunday picks up right there, and there's no indication that Jesus has set that child aside. It's the disciples, it's us, who are always in a hurry to put down those children so we can free our hands and get back to work, our important work that we have to do, our adult work, like deciding who's in and who's out, like guarding our turf and fighting with those who try to invade our space, literal and metaphoric. Yes, our important adult work is all about drawing and enforcing lines in the sand so that we can protect our sacred possessions and positions and our institutions at all costs. Even like covering up sexual abuse in our churches so we don't damage people's faith, or wrangling about long-hidden, forgotten sexual misconduct, with each side throwing dirt until no one can see clearly. But is this how adults are supposed to act? Can we honestly say that we're properly exercising the responsibility entrusted to us? What are our children learning as they watch us in action? Jesus is still holding that child from last week, and that child stands in our midst and tells us what our community is to be about. In case we forget last week, Jesus says some harsh words to remind us. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. He continues with the same hyperbolic words about cutting off our physical members that offend us, providing a little extra motivation with hellfire. And yet we still dismiss, disregard, and forget his central message about the kind of people we're called to be as Christ's disciples. When seen in the narrative of its flow, the sin that continues to plague us is missing Jesus' call to care for the little ones. Inattention to the little ones imperils one's life, now and indeed eternally. Children are portrayed as those who practice that key marker of discipleship. They trust, they believe, they receive. When Jesus held that toddler in their midst, Christ declared the child a sacrament of God's presence and his own. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. This story warns us to pay attention to the children who give us access to the presence of God. And when we speak of children, it doesn't have to be the literal reality, just those who are chronologically aged as children. In a way, all of us are children. All of us remember that little child that we carry inside of us, the fragile, weak one, the hurt one we sometimes try and protect at all costs. In another way, we're all God's children. And yet too often we fight like children, setting secret snares and stumbling blocks for each other so that we can feign mastery or get the upper hand. Our moralism and our tribalism too often cause us to stumble and prevent us from growing into the people that God calls us to be. This gospel story reminds me indeed of a modern-day rivalry that's been studied recently by Harvard scholars. And it's nothing other than the Boston Red Sox versus the New York Yankees. Even if you barely follow baseball, you likely know about this feud, as ancient as the Hatfield versus McCoys. Just look at two common slogans associated with the rivalry. Keep calm and hate the Yankees is a real slogan used by Sox fans. And I support two teams, the Yankees and whoever beats the Red Sox, appears on paraphernalia worn by Yankees fans. In doing sociological research with fans, these scholars have shown that hostility towards outgroups, that is rivals, actually exceeds the warmth we experience from our own groups. This is perhaps not shocking, but it's a deeply troubling reality. Why is conflict so entrenched? Because the fans, like the disciples in the gospel, have forgotten that figure of the child. They've lost the joy of the game itself and can only find joy in another's defeat. Just like Apostle John in today's gospel, we simply lose track of those whom Jesus has put in the center of our community. We become distracted by competition, our own status, or deciding who's one of us and who's not. Jesus calls us to be a community of peace where trusting children are cherished, where we learn from our children how to trust each other and hold each other accountable. We don't have to live in that world of constant conflict and rivalry, where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So perhaps it's time that we decide to make a change. That we, the people who are gathered in this room, realize that we have the power to change things. Of course, we're committed to forming faithful children here at St. Luke's, but our Sunday school and youth group and other children's programming isn't going to accomplish that alone. All of us have work to do. We need to remember the vulnerable and trusting child that we carry inside of each of us. And we need to be the kind of adults that we needed when we were younger. This change will not come easy. It's going to take courage and attentive prayer. We're going to have to put aside our cynicism, our sarcasm, and our fearful insecurities. We need to view the world with childlike wonder and joy. And we desperately need the power of God to work in us. I love that word, God. A friend of mine recently shared a definition of what God is that really grabbed me. She said, God is the energy who generates, organizes, and disrupts. G-O-D. Generates, organizes, and disrupts. This is the moment where we remake our community, our St. Luke's community, our greater Jamestown community, and every community we touch, simply by grabbing hold of God's energy. We can generate a new vision, seize it as a means to organize ourselves, and disrupt those failing rivalries. I'm not sure if you're aware of just how unique a moment this is, or even just how unique this community this is. You see, I think St. Luke's is special because we don't fall into tribal patterns that decides who's in and who's out, who's one of us and who's not. We don't define ourselves against others at all. We define our community by who God is calling us to become and by faithfully engaging in the service work that God has called us to do. We're not using fear to motivate us, fear of hell or failure, but we're choosing to let love lead us. Welcoming God's embrace, we accept God's love as God's children, which makes, of course, all of us brothers and sisters. A love that makes us all one community, with no inside or outside, just children of God. With the figure of the child firmly rooted in the middle of our community, I think we can remember then our responsibility to both care for the vulnerable and to be vulnerable ourselves. For us truly to achieve this revolutionary work, we need everyone to take an intentional and active role. We're invited into leadership, all of us. And that figure of the child reminds us that our community is oriented to the future, to the people that God is beckoning us to become, and the people we're called to serve. This morning, the choice is yours. Will you be part of that movement? Will you reach out in hope and love and become the child of God that you're called to be? Amen.